to Minds on a Mission, the podcast where we explore the journeys that challenge us, change us, and chart the best course for our best selves. You can find us on pretty much any streaming platform of your choice. I'm your host, Samantha Bailey, an entrepreneur and content creator, and today's lovely guest is Kathy Micheel. Did I get it?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Perfect. Yes. One day I will be a master at names, and that day I'm ready for it to come.
No worries. I married into the last name. It's Micheel. Looks like Michael with 2 E's.
Nice. Yeah, I know. When I seen how you said how to pronounce it, I was like, I would never think that.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. And you said you were married into it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a German name. They tell me there's a German G in it. So.
Well, I like it. I think it suits you.
Thank you.
So to start off, for anyone who may not know you, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, let's go back in time. I am the first girl born to the Schnitzer family in over 90 years. And so I married a farmer. We met in 4-H, and our kids are in 4-H now as well. And back in the day, we would be sitting around tables and just learning from each other, whether it was the family unit or the neighbors that were over, because everybody was just helpful. And so I got to hear a lot of the stories. And then as I married my husband, I guess you would say, more stories just came into my life. And so genealogy is one of those passion projects. And we go from there. So yeah, just a small smidgen of the genealogy side of me.
Perfect. So 2 questions. What is 4-H?
Okay.
And then after you explain that, what is genealogy?
Okay. So with the 4-H, it is a worldwide program, and they teach you the life skills. And I was with the indoor side, and my husband was with the livestock side of 4-H. And our kids have gotten a mix of both. And so it's been very interesting to see how they have been growing up based on the life events that have been in my family and in my husband's family. And so it's just a nice mix of helping people to make the best better is the 4-H motto. And so that is part of my passion, is to take what I've learned in the past, what I've learned from others in the past, and get myself and others out of the overwhelm. The genealogy side comes in with passing on what have I learned. So when I went to college, I went for business management and computer programming. And what I could envision I wanted wasn't developed yet. And so I am the person that grew up with the party line. And for those of you that don't know, the party line was the telephone back in the day where you would have to be patient and wait for your turn to get on the phone to talk to the next person. And with the advancement of technology, it's just been wonderful to go back and help teach other kids what we've grown up with and reapply it. The genealogy, my grandma has always been the keeper of the history of our family. And then my other grandma, she was always the picture taker of the family. And so mixing the two is what I help people do, because when my clients come in, they're like, hey, I need X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, if I don't have a solution, we'll create it just for you. And today I was talking to people, and it was just amazing, the conversations that come up. There would be a song on the radio and it would just trigger a memory. And so we always take those happy memories and put them to good use, or we take the sad points of our life and put them to use. So in 4-H, back to your original question of what is 4-H, it is helping youth learn the life skills so that they can go on and make the best better. One of the fun examples that I've um, had recently come up was the sale of a beef product. When you go to the grocery store, it's like, oh, what am I eating? And I'm like, well, this has a little bit more marbling. It's going to taste better. And this is this cut. And I just help other people understand where they've come from and where they're heading. So that's where the two meld together.
Hmm. I appreciate you explaining that for us because I honestly have never heard of either of those terms. So when you said it, I really was intrigued by that because I was like, 4-H, I'm not sure.
Yep. So it's the head, the heart, the health, and oh my goodness, drawing a blank. I feel so bad as a proud 4-H'er. Head, heart, health, and oh. I pledge my head to clearer thinking, my heart to greater loyalty, my hands to larger service, and my health to better living for my club, my community, my country, and my world. There you go. So,
Perfect. I love that.
yeah. So, yeah. The bridge and the time and the time and the bridge, yeah, they eventually come back.
I love that. Um, how did you originally come across these things?
4-H has been around for many years. My grandma was actually a 4-H'er, so I'm the fourth 4-H'er in my side of the family.
Okay. And is that something that you could just kind of learn about from your family being within it, or is there a certain way if someone was interested in this, how they would come across that?
Yeah, very good question. So, um, as with genealogy, there's this big family tree, and genealogy is the research of your family and your heritage back to as early as the 1300s, 1400s, and before that. Um, so 4-H, if you actually look back at a lot of the 4-H families, that's how they met. And so 4-H for us is like a family tree. My husband and I are just two of the 4-Hers that met and got married in that program.
That's cool. Um, trying to think. Sorry, my brain's
No,
a little.
you're fine.
I know we talked a little bit before this. How I've been off all weekend, so bear with me. um, okay. So you said this is like a program that you started when you were younger.
Yes, yep. And so, how people can get signed up for 4-H is every October, the first week, it's called National 4-H Week. And we try to get out there and promote 4-H for people to come in and join. It's ages 8 up through 18. And pretty much anything that you can think of, there is a project for. So, for example, if you like to write music, there is a program for that. And everything is graded on a purple ribbon, blue ribbon, red ribbon, and white ribbon. And so, if you think of every um, invention, it always starts at the bottom as a white ribbon, and then you go and improve it, and then it moves up to the red ribbon status, and then goes on to be a blue and a purple. And so we're always striving to have the best, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to be what is needed at this time. For example, that party line of the phones, that was the phones that we had at that time. That was great. And then we transitioned into the phones with the cords and then so forth to the cell phones. And now we have these little mini computers, these smart computers, and pretty much has a phone now too.
Right. So, how do you feel, or trying to think how I wanted this? What is one of the biggest lessons you think you've learned from being in the 4-H program?
That what you're doing at this moment does matter because every conversation does make a difference. We're always looking for an answer or a solution. And if you don't have it, somebody else does. It's kind of like I always think back to a cookbook and a recipe. A cookbook is only good if there's multiple recipes in there. And for every recipe, you have a title, you have ingredients, you have directions of how to make that best pie or that best cake or the best tasting steak. So um, that would be where 4-H has really helped, is that you go back in and continue continue to look for the answer that you're wanting.
That was a wonderful answer. And I want to veer off into other things later on, but I
Mhm.
am really intrigued with this part right now. So if you don't mind, just ask a couple more questions regarding
Yeah.
this. So what do you feel like one of the most memorable events or things that happened while being in this program?
So um, I will admit I am not the best cook. I married my husband who does like to cook and grill, and so our kids they were in it's called the special foods program, and we would make the same recipe over and over again just to get it perfected, because when you're grilling that hamburger and it comes out with a pink center, some people like that, some people don't. So you're continuously making the same meal over and over again until it actually looks good and you can plate it. So when we watch those TV programs and you're always seeing people doing competitions, when we were in 4-H, we are doing those same competitions and learning what is the best nutrients, what's the best minerals and vitamins, how to combine a healthy sugar with other ingredients to make the best cake or smoothie or whatever. And so you would also take a test, and you would have to know why you're drinking this water, why you're drinking these minerals and vitamins, what does calcium do for you. And so when I was helping the kids learn all the micros and macronutrients, I would get up in the camper and just review, kind of like a teacher does. And anyway, there was a really funny moment, and I'm not going to get up and do it right now, but it was all hand actions of you got to drink the water to stay hydrated, and you've got to move your body. And that's why you're using or eating all these carbs, and you would just sit there and run in place. And the kids would just laugh at me because I was really being that cheerleader, that mentor to really drive it home. So I'm very action orientated, and I like to um, do things differently than others to get the point across. So I might just have a little post-it note and say, okay, write 2 words and then come up with a sentence, type of a thing. So yeah,
Right.
4-H has helped me think outside the box. We'll put it that way.
That's good. I feel like that's something I definitely would have been interested had I known. I feel like, well, you said it's ages 8 to 18.
It
Yeah, so
is.
I'm a bit
Yep.
too old for that now.
Yeah, they have clover buds. So we would go into the schools and introduce 4-H, and we would do all of these little crafts, and they would come home and show their parents and say, hey, I want to go into this program and learn more. So we have many categories: visual arts, home environment, there's foods and nutrition. Then you have your livestock. And so it's broke down by species, which is the cattle and the sheep and the hogs and the goats and the chickens. And so everybody gets to experience it, whether you're on a farm or in town.
Oh, yeah, I feel like, wow, I wish I knew, I really do wish I knew about this because I feel like I would have loved it. Um, I feel like I'm kind of a nerd and I like certain things like that. And with schools, it's like you don't really get much of those options. Like the closest I had to learning anything regarding like life skills was economics class, but that was just a fraction of what I feel like you should learn.
Yeah.
So it'd be cool to see maybe like if they had something like that, but in schools.
Mhm. So, going back to other things that you might have been interested in, they have computers and scrapbooking and reading and writing type of a things, and even clothing. So, people have been known to um, design their own clothes, not just go off of a pattern and do the fashion review, and then go on from there to decide what kind of career path they want. So 4-H does give you this huge background of, well, I'd like to try this. And then you learn that skill set. And it's like, oh, no, I don't want to do that for an 8 to 5 job later on. Let's try this. And so it really helps um, kids not just learn those life skills between 8 and 18, but it helps them to know, am I going to really want to go into home environment and design houses and that kind of um, career path, or what's going to go happen.
Right. One thing I thought was if someone were just like right now just starting out in 4-H, what would be one of the biggest pieces of advice you would give them?
Uh, just simply start. Go to the local extension office and ask where they could join a 4-H club. So in Beetle County, where we're at, we have 4 or 5 different clubs. And some of us are more livestock orientated, and some of us are more of the indoor. We do a lot of community service projects as well, and leadership.
That's that's a good thing. I wish my wasn't so tired, so my brain is like, I'm sorry.
No
Uh,
worries.
so I know we talked a bit about this, and so now I kind of want to go into the genealogy
Yeah.
aspect and kind of they're asking similar questions because I'm intrigued to know what you would say for those as well. So um, I'm trying to think. What is one of the biggest things that you feel like you have learned from genealogy?
So if you can picture the wagon wheel, we all started with a wagon wheel. Then we added a layer of metal on there to make it go further. And then we gave it some rubber tread. And we're like, oh, this is good enough. And then we're like, okay, I'm headed up north. I need deeper tread to make it through the snow and all those other winter conditions versus living in the south. And you only need a certain type of rubber tread. So with me and the genealogy, I always think back of, okay, if they came here across, Wisconsin and Minnesota and South Dakota to get here to do all the farming and raise the best crops for us, what can I do to help others go in their direction and their path? And if I look back at who my ancestors were, they weren't just pioneers and homesteaders, they actually built roads. And so a lot of the roads that we have in our county were actually built by my ancestors. And it was like, okay, what kind of equipment did you have? And, you know, it's more of, we all have a dash that we live. And so I always say, live your dash out loud. We're more than just our birth date and our death date. We did stuff in our lifetimes that impacted others. And so as I was growing up in 4-H, we would be out on the farm, and we were planting shelter belts, and you had to go and pull out all the weeds. And so in genealogy, it's like, okay, here's what they did, here's what I did. Let's tell the story before somebody else tells our story for us. And with genealogy, it you can go around to cemeteries and just grab pictures of the grave sites. But that's not the part of genealogy that I am most interested in. That's just one piece. I like to have the conversation and get to know people and then write the stories about them. And I mainly focus on what I can help with, because the biggest words in my vocabulary is how can I help you? And it all stems back from 4-H, because in 4-H it was like, how can I help my community? How can I help this other 4 pardon me, this other 4-H'er get that purple ribbon? And then when our kids got into 4-H, it's like, okay, what life skills can I help you with that are going to make a difference for you in the future?
I
So
really
it kind of intertwines together, I guess you would say.
right. I really like the analogy that you used for that. That was really well explained. And yeah, I feel like I still have some, I guess, unclearness on it, but I think that's just because I've never heard about it before. So, it's my first time kind of learning
Yeah.
about it, but it's very interesting. Um,
So you had mentioned you had wished that there was programs in schools. There is actually one in school right now. It's called Destination Imagination, and it actually goes from um, well, there's we'll just say kindergarten through university level. So right now we have multiple teams in our local schools that are competing, and it's all based on STEM, and then they added the A for the arts. So you have your science and your technology, your engineering, um, and that's where the arts come in, and then mathematics. So every child and team is given a challenge, and they all have to work together to solve that one problem. So a few years ago, they all had to build a roller coaster in one of their challenge events. And the kids, they can only be up to 7 minds. And so 7 individuals or less, and no less than 2 people on a team. So you have to have at least 2 minds, but no more than 7 to solve that problem. And it's very interesting to see how the kids interact with each other to get their project done. Everybody contributes an idea just like you would at work. And then you take the combination of everybody to come up with the best result. So in 4-H, you're usually on your own project, your own time, trying to get it perfected so that it will earn that purple. In Destination Imagination, you actually are more in a work environment, that career level of going back and forth. So, uh, yeah.
that's cool. It's glad to see that, like, it's seeming like things are starting to kind of go in a direction where it might be, having more programs and things like that in schools, which is really cool.
Mhm.
Um, so could you kind of tell us where you're at right now with everything, and just kind of give an insights of like what your day to day looks like?
Okay. So, I am currently a health and life coach. I was in the corporate world for over 20 years. So when I started, I was actually as an employee to a family-owned business in the agriculture world. From there, I went into a cooperative setting, still doing ag business. And from there, I went into crop insurance world, which meant I got to talk to many people across the United States. And based on different crops. So whenever there was a weather event that came in and devastated people and their crops, I was there as that customer service person to kind of help bridge that gap of, okay, here is Mother Nature and here is, what you're looking at. I couldn't tell them how to farm, but I could review their options based on that policy. And so I would give them a few moments and then let them know that the next person would be calling and they would actually be able to be the boots on the ground and helping. In January of this year, I transitioned out of corporate world into the health and life coaching. I should back up. I went and got the health and life certificate back in the COVID days, knowing that there was more people out there that needed me as the customer service, me as the liaison, me trying to make the best better for each person, because when COVID hit, they're like, oh my goodness, I've always done this. Now what do I do? And I'm like, okay, I can help you, because back in 4-H, here was the life skills. Here's what I had to do. And then I was like, oh, I remember my grandparents saying, this is what I needed to do because this is what was going on in the big world. And so I just went back and said, okay, I can help myself out of the overwhelm. I can help others out of the overwhelm based on all these other data points that are out there, whether it was life experiences or in a textbook, but just trying to help that anxiety level of people come back down and be able to have huge conversations has been wonderful.
It's awesome. And as for the health and life coaching, what would you say is something that you really have learned since started doing this?
That every moment is really today forward. You can not go back and change the past, but you can go and say, hey, this has happened. Let's try it this way. Or, hey, I like this. Let's continue on this same path. You're never stuck. We're unplanted trees, we're planted, and then you get to blow in the wind. What conversation is going to breeze by that's going to make that pivotal change in your mindset and say, oh yeah, I can do this. I'm human too. I said the other day, man, I just feel like I need to melt down. And someone said, do I have to watch? I'm like, no, you don't have to watch. I just need a moment. Let me go, regroup, and then regrow. And so we're never stuck. We always just continue to grow and flourish. You take those little bits of moments and words and conversations, and different things that you see, like that bridge behind me, this side, the bridge behind me. It's like, okay, is this the type of bridge I need? Or do I need a different type of bridge to get me where I want to go? And then the time, it's not really ending until you're 6 feet under. Days in the COVID, they're like 6 feet apart. I'm like, okay, I'm still going to see my grandma. She is not 6 feet under, but we can at least see each other, still have that conversation.
Right. And I really like the way you worded that. And I was thinking too, I've heard you say a couple times, make the best better. And I was wondering kind of if that's something that you had heard, from someone, maybe a mentor or something, or if that was a certain phrasing that you created.
Nope, it's actually the 4-H motto, to make
Or-
the best better. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we have the 4-H pledge, which is the one where I came up with my words again. So,
Right. Okay.
but
Yeah,
yeah.
I like that. I had never heard that or the other thing before, the pledge. So that's why I
Yeah.
was wondering.
Nope.
What would you say is one of your favorite things about health and life coaching?
That I do make a difference in somebody else's life and that I can reassure them that they are making a difference. Just like this podcast, your name, mine's on a mission, that just resonated with me right away. I was like, I've really got to get to meet Samantha and just, get that conversation because it's uplifting. Just the name of your title. My every time I go on video, I lean back to the real daily news because news to me, I do not watch television type of news on a daily basis unless I absolutely need, the weather or whatnot. Because in my world, the real daily news is nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, and sleep. And without those four things, you can't go. So you need the nutrition to get going. You need the exercise because you can't just sit still. You got to get up and move and regenerate your internal battery. And then the water, got to stay hydrated. And then with the sunshine and sleep, you only have so many hours in a day. And I always encourage everybody to live the life that they imagined, live your dash out loud. If you don't have the answer, that's fine. Somebody else does. You just need to keep asking or researching. So, yeah.
Right. And I really appreciate what you said about the title and it resonating with you. Honestly, when I was coming up with names, I was having such a hard time. And like I talked a little bit about this before we got on, but that really I've really come to learn how to utilize AI and how to, so it was a lot of tweaking. I was going through and I had so many names, prompted
Mhm.
that I was trying to figure out. And I had a couple other ones that I was like, because I already knew what the premise was of the podcast, but the name was quite a hard one. But something about this one, I came across it. I kept have like creating more names, and I just kept coming back up to that one. And I'm like, I don't know, something about that name just kind of suits what the purpose of the podcast is for. Um,
Yeah. So, do you have like a certain hashtag that you put in with your Minds on a Mission podcast name?
Yeah, so I'll put hashtags at the end of um each episode, and I'll have, that's usually one of them. And then also it's like based on kind of the topic. A lot of the ones is like entrepreneur or trying to think. It depends, or I'll like hashtag podcast, just certain ones that kind of fit the episode.
Okay. So here's a good one for you. And it's the hashtag that I use. It's hashtag just verb it. Because with everything that we do, we have to have a verb. Like talking, thinking.
Hmm.
I need to cook. I need to drink. I need to write something. You can't move forward. And so, um, like yourself, the name, somebody said, why Today Forward Consulting? I'm like, everything is today forward. You and I can have a consulting, a coaching, a conversation, but it just needs to have what is going on. So it's always today forward consulting based on the four pillars of the health, the life, the business, and genealogy.
Right.
So if you think of it, you have to have your health to have the life. And when you have a life, you're either the employee or the employer or the teacher or the student. And then we're all in the business of helping one another. And then that genealogy part is how do I transition to the next generation? How do I help that next generation flourish?
Right. And like if someone were to ask me that same question of like the name for mine, I'm like, it just fits. I'm like, the whole premise was for me to sit down with other entrepreneurs and to really get to know each other and kind of get in the insight of what really drives people and motivates them towards what they're doing, and kind of understanding, because there's so many different niches out there. I've since doing this, I've learned so many new things that I had no idea were a thing. And one of the biggest ones was I didn't know what craniosacral massage therapy was, and that was one of the first things I had. Actually, I had two guests when I first started, that both were in that field, and I just was like, and I had some people ask me like, why so broad? Like, why aren't you narrowed down to a specific niche? And I just was like, but what is the fun in that? Because I don't like being narrowed down to a box. I like having, the openness to be able to explore different things. I still haven't figured out, exactly the path I'm taking. Like I know a good amount of what I want to do, but I'm still learning. And so it's kind of cool to get to sit down with people in different fields and kind of be like, maybe I'm interested in that, or, and kind of get to take away and also get to share things that I've learned, because I feel like I have learned a lot with like mindset. So Minds on a Mission just felt perfect.
I do like that. I love your backstory of, how it came about, and those interview conversations, those are huge because you can always pivot and change off of them. When I was in college going for computer programming, I was a uh, customer service person at the local J.C. Penney. It doesn't exist anymore, but a clothing store. And the teachers would come in. They're like, "Oh, I need a new outfit. The kids are tired of me seeing me in this outfit." And so I would mix and match different outfits for them, and they would go out happy. And then I was also a medication aide at the local assisted livings. And that's where I kind of decided that, okay, I need to keep taking care of my health. I gained that freshman 15, just like everybody else normally. And as I was handing out all their meds, it's like, oh, okay, I really don't want to end up going that direction and end up having to have all those meds later on. I already had asthma and allergies in my background. So I was always looking for something that would make me more healthy. And so um, it's just through conversations of, they're like, you just need to eat less anti inflammatory foods. You need to drink more water. You need to do slight little swaps, get rid of that extra sugar. And I'm like, but I like my ice cream. And they're like, well, dairy turns into sugar. I'm like, okay, I can cut it out. Not all of it, but I'm not going to have the cup of ice cream. I'd get on the scale. It's like, okay, I can do a half a cup. And then I don't store as much sugar. So it's just small tweaks that we make along our journey that add up to big things, I guess you would say.
Right. Yeah, I feel like it's the only way to figure out is to just try stuff and kind of play around with it. And
Yeah.
I felt like for a while and I still struggle a little bit with this mindset, but I've gotten a lot better with it. But just kind of worrying about, I've always thought, well, what if I spend all this time doing something and I figure out I don't like it and I just wasted all that time? And it sucks because it's like something that, I feel like a lot of people we're always chasing after is like more time, because we're only on earth for so long, and you want to be able to spend more time with family members and things, have more experiences and stuff. But I really worked hard on like slowing down and like really appreciating where I'm at and kind of realizing that like it's okay to, allow myself to explore things even if I'm not 100% sure it's going to work out.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. Everybody's journey is different, but we needed you to be on this journey so that I could be here on this journey. Does that make sense?
Right.
So even if you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing, you were doing the right thing for right now and for others. For example, me. Um, so I'm always looking for, how do I get more PTO? And PTO for a lot of people has always been paid time off. And right now, PTO has a different meaning for me. So it's more of patience, time, and other stuff. That's the PTO that I am chasing. And if you don't have patience with yourself or others, you're wasting a lot of time. And it could be good, bad time, but it just needs to happen.
Right. Yeah, I like that you kind of have created like your own adaptations of things. Sorry, I like had a weird thing. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think that's really a really good way to look at it. And I definitely worked a lot on patience. I feel like I used to be super impatient. I just very much was like, go now, and and I'm just more of, like I said, kind of really trying to enjoy my time, and just be in the moment. So lately I'm trying to work on a balance and spending more time with my loved ones, like my grandmother. And so Yeah, it definitely sometimes feels a bit overwhelming because sometimes it feels like I don't have enough time for all these things. But I just realized some weeks may feel more productive than others, and it's all based on kind of how I'm feeling. And I always tell myself like not every week's gonna be the same. Like sometimes you need to slow down more and just have breaks and not take a bit of time to recenter yourself.
Yeah, very, very true. Um, Everything is either obstacle or an opportunity. You just have to decide. And
Mm.
so um, I kind of think of myself as a positivity coach of, okay, overwhelm only lasts for as long as you want it. Just choose the next verb to get out of it. So if any of that resonates with you, I'm here. Just, chat a message. Everything's always um, stemming from my main website, Today Forward Consulting, and from there it's like an endless railroad or bridges. And so yeah.
Right. Yeah, I feel like I'm at a really good place, and I feel like it's taken me a long time to kind of be happy with where I am. And so yeah, I feel pretty good. I feel like it's definitely a lot of things at once, but a lot of good things. So, when it gets less daunting when you're like, I know these are a lot of good things that are happening, and like I'm definitely someone sometimes where I'm looking at the overall like, oh well, I gotta do all, and like it already in my brain like listen out all the things, and like before it's even happened, and then I get stressed out because I'm like, oh it's a lot, but then I'm just like, it's good to kind of already think about a plan, but just to kind of like realize like things are gonna happen how it's gonna happen. I don't need to be so OCD about things all the time. So
Yeah, yep. We're in 4-H, we're always looking to strive for that purple, but you might need, I've got reds, I got whites, and lots of blues. You might need those red, white, and blue moments to get to that purple, is what my big takeaway was growing up in 4-H. Nothing's ever completely perfect, but it can be darn close. So,
I like that. I was thinking if someone were interested in reaching out to you for your health and life coaching, I would love to kind of know your breakdown on how they could go about that and what to expect. I'm not sure if you do like I know some people do a free initial consult or but I would love to know kind of the premise behind that, what they would expect.
yes, very good question. There is a free consult, and you can choose whichever pillar to start in. You would go out to todayforwardconsulting.com, and from there, you'll get into the time management ROI section. And that's where we kind of dive into what is really holding you back. What's that overwhelm that you just can't seem to get out of that rut. And we just have curated programs for the one-to-one coaching, but then I also do one-to-many, where if everybody is like, hey, I just want to look at my family tree and I only know my birth date, my grandparents' birth date, and my parents' birth date, that gives us a little bit to go on. As for the health and life, everybody um, needs to have the right amount of nutrition, the exercise, the water, sunshine, and sleep. And we have cookbooks and different seasonings that are accessible to everybody. Some of the seasonings I've actually created, and we've even got little kids, toddlers actually eating their vegetables now because they have flavor, they taste good. I was one of those moms that would get home from that 8 to 5 corporate world and it's like, okay, what's for supper? And so trying to help parents that were in that overwhelm that I was experiencing and wishing that somebody had stepped up and said, hey, here's what we have, here's just a quick little 1, 2, 3, get going. A lot of times when I was growing up, doing homework, it was like, okay, really? I don't want to do the homework. I want to do this. So in my cookbooks, I bridge the gap of it's more fun time, it's more activities, and then you get those little kids to learn how to cook for themselves and not set off the fire alarms. So yeah,
That's cool.
we have multiple different resources. We've got journaling prompts, and so I will gladly give somebody 5 journaling prompts that will help them get out of the overwhelm if they message us with your podcast name. Mine's On a Mission.
Okay. So, was that for a certain amount of people, or just anybody, if they wanted to reach out, they would get the 5 journaling
Yep,
prompts?
it will be for anybody for 2024 and 2025.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, I definitely I appreciate that. And now we'll kind of chat after to see how I want that, because I'll have that put in the description, but I'll just have you
Okay,
kind of help me how to set that up so we can have it in a way that would be best fitting for you.
that works.
Awesome. So when you started to do health and life coaching, how did you kind of figure out what things you wanted to have included with your programs?
I went and looked back at my struggles as the mom. I have a husband and he's wonderful. And I have a great family unit. My parents and even my in laws, they would help out. So with the neighbors. But it was like, I always felt like I was intruding on somebody else's time that's so precious. Instead of just asking for the help, I wish I would have. So what I've done is I went back in and said, okay, reflecting what made me feel more negative towards myself, that I could flip the script and say, this is how I felt. I don't want somebody else to feel like this anymore. And I can't fix everything, but I can give resources or tips or suggest who else they can get in touch with if I don't have the solution. So I create it, I share it, or I find it and then I share it.
Right. I like that. And it was just very interesting to me to kind of know, because I wouldn't say I've definitely thought about coaching um as an overall thing of what, kind of exploring, like, or what is some things that maybe I would want to do. Coaching definitely was something that I came across, but my struggle has been figuring out what the exact topic, or would be, like what kind of coaching I would want to do. But definitely helps to kind of know, like, if I were to have my own practice, to kind of know, like, okay, what steps should I kind of take in creating my own process.
Yeah,
I appreciate
you're welcome. So the business side, going back to my computer programming, I'm always looking at the ones and zeros, the if then statements, the WYSIWYG. What you get is what you input is what you get out. So if you put in the wrong um, Excel type of a program, the wrong code, you're going to get back the wrong answer. And so I I always just kind of go back and say, okay, that didn't work. What can I make to make it better? And then just go from there. And I do ask for other people's opinions and reviews and testimonials, and just say, hey, I know I struggle at certain things. What can you do to help me so that I can help others? So being on a podcast with you, it's kind of given me that, okay, I can have a conversation, not just with me and my mirror. I can actually, talk to other people and just grow that way too. So
right.
4-H does help with the speaking and the engagement and the presence. I do talk with my hands. I was an oral interp in college and in high school. So you just pick up little things. And the first computer that we actually had at the high school was the Oregon Trail, the old one, and the Atari games. And so just to see and put things together. So it's like, I call it backwards Tetris. I have things kind of falling into place, and then it's like, oh, wrong color, move this one and whatnot. So you
Right.
just work backwards or work forwards, depending on where you're at, or get some things going over here. And then it's like, okay, now it's time to put the engine in. And now let's put on the body parts of the car and get that vehicle down the road. So
Right. Have you ever been on a podcast before?
I have not, no.
You have
I've
not?
done a lot of Zooms where, it's just me and somebody else or my clients talking, and I do a lot of listening. And then at the end, it's like, okay, so what are your wins? What are your goals? And then we just kind of keep the conversation going. So I do have a 12-week transformation program that I go through people. And so that one is very, very interesting to see. It's kind of like that little toddler. You want them to walk, you want them to, run someday, but you have to get them to do the baby steps, the little elbow crawl first.
Right.
And so seeing that 360 lifestyle integration transformation, I call it a farm to table experience with me, because I bring the farm life back into the conversation of, okay, did you get a plant today? And is it watered? Did you give it the fertilizer it needs? Did it get enough sunshine and sleep? Well, did you do that for yourself? Or people who love to travel, you always hear those things of put the oxygen mask on first so you can save somebody else. Well, it's true. There was a lot of times I didn't take care of myself, because it was like I'd wake up and it's like, okay, I need to help X, Y, and Z get through this before I can do my thing. And I'm like, no, that's not what you need to do. You need to group yourself together, get out of that overwhelm so that you can be that person that the other person is needing.
Right. Yeah, I feel like kind of going back to the podcast thing. Yeah, it's definitely, I feel like I talked a little bit about this on my last episode, but I've actually, so for me it's the opposite. I've actually never been the one to be interviewed on a podcast. So I've always been the host, the interviewing someone. And I mean, I guess I'd have a little bit of experience in a way of being on my mom's podcast, but it wasn't really, it was kind of more just like a group discussion versus like anyone being interviewed. So I definitely feel like with the last guests I talked to, they've been on and they also had hosted their own. So I kind of was like, well, what do you think? Do you think that maybe being a host kind of feels easier, or being the guest, what feels like more natural? And kind of what I thought, she agreed that it's definitely comes more natural being the guest versus being the host,
Ah,
which it's more of like being a host. I feel like it's a little more intricate because you kind of come up with like questions on the spot, and so it's kind of a little more I'm not sure how I'd word that, but I feel like a bit more to think about, because you kind of got to think of like what's your next question versus being the guest. You kind of, I feel like, just kind of flows, when you're, especially when you're really passionate about what you're talking about, just kind of comes out. So that was just
yeah.
kind of something.
Well, I was trying not to overthink, what kind of questions is she going to ask? I
Right.
have such a varied background because of that generational. I remember my great great grandparents, where a lot of people don't. I'm the oldest child, where, my younger siblings are like, oh, she always got to do this. I'm like, well, maybe, but I didn't get to do that. Well, it was because we all lived in a different, not really era, but kind of, I'm an 80s child, really. But,
Right.
it's, you just kind of, um, a lot of the 80s children, my classmates, they didn't grow up with the party line. I've got a telephone chair that's over 100 years old in my house. So I'm slowly going through my house and saying, okay, if I was going to be a minimalist, I at least want the picture, I want the story. And so I'm just been going around and saying, tell me more about that story. Because one of the ladies that I took care of at the assisted living, she was a telephone operator where you would actually plug it, the cords in and whatnot to get everybody connected. Well, this summer we were out camping and one of the ladies said she was a telephone operator the day that Elvis died. And I'm like, seriously? So I didn't actually, it wasn't a podcast, but it was in person conversation. I'm like, please tell me more about that. That is just, interesting. And so for me, I've been able to talk to multiple people that my kids and my family are like, oh, no, you've never talked to those people. I'm like, oh, yes, I have. So when you go in through my house, you'll see different items that just bring back memory. And one of the latest pieces I've got is actually the man walking on the moon, just a newspaper article. It was in a frame from Hobby Lobby, nothing fancy. But I remember writing to NASA when I was in seventh grade, and I actually got a letter back from them. I was like, wow. So it's just those little things that just all of a sudden pop up in conversation, and they're like, wow, that's just amazing. Destination Imagination, for example, that's also a worldwide program. So when our kids go to compete on the world level, you get to meet people from around, obviously, the world. And there was the Poland group down in front of us. And I was like, oh, you know, I know that some of my ancestors actually came from Poland, but I have no idea how to even speak to them. And I know that they were speaking English in front of us, but I didn't go up and approach them because I didn't have anything to really ask or say. But it sparked the idea in my head of when I get home, I need to go back through, find a picture, and make a note of that story.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I like
but
that.
yeah,
I feel like I don't really have a lot of things. I mean, I have some stuff, but I I won't go into it. I feel like I'm only 21 and I feel like I've got so much in my backstory already of just like the life I have lived. So part of it was just moving around a lot and kind of dealing with poverty. So I didn't for a while I didn't really have things like that I carried on because we were just moving so much. So I'm starting to kind of build that collection of certain things that like just make me happy or, build memories. But they're kind of newer because I've only been out on my own for, wow, I mean, 3 years, I think, since I was
okay.
18. So,
Well, don't discount those little moments because in 20 years, you're going to go back and go, oh my goodness.
right. Yeah. Right
Yeah.
now it feels like small because I'm like, well, they're not from a long time ago, like when I was younger, but they're things that I'm starting to build now that I'm on my own and like have a stable place. Starting to build my own like collection of things. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, so oh, I don't know if you're gonna say something. Sorry.
So yeah, that's the other thing is our kids are
Right.
teenagers. They're going to be taking over the family farm, and so a lot of us are trying to figure out how to transition, that next generation into the farm. And so I don't just talk with one generation. I am actually fluent in English, and then throughout the generations to get people out of that overwhelm into the next stage of life. So,
Right. I
yeah.
really like that. I feel like you have so much like in your backstory, like a lot of things that like I never had heard about before today. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And I'm sure there's some people like me who maybe didn't know what some of those things were. So like 4-H and the genealogy. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And I didn't know that when you set up that this was your first ever podcast episode. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yep. So, speaking of firsts and loving genealogy, just sparked the conversation because you never know where it's going to lead. A lady came up to me and said, are you really from South Dakota? And I said, yeah. And she's like, so am I. And she goes, I'm actually a descendant of William Penn. I'm like, wow, that's just amazing just to figure out other people's genealogy. So if anybody needs genealogy research in Beetle County or South Dakota, I do that as well, because it's not easy to fly here and get the hotel room and the time to get up to the courthouse and back home if you have limited PTO. So I am here.
Right. Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna start like bugging my friends and stuff, be like, "What's your genealogy?" And just that's definitely something I'm probably after this gonna be looking a bit into and kind of learning more about because yeah, that's it's really interesting. I would say I don't know much about my ancestry. I know a little bit, kind of, you know, a little bit about my background. Like I know my mom's always said like where I'm part Irish and French and I believe she said Native American, but I don't know like the people from beyond, a certain point in my family tree. So that would be kind of interesting to kind of look into to kind of see, what
Yeah.
their lives were like. Well, so we hit the hour mark, and I don't want to take too much more of your time. But I really appreciate you again coming on tonight and getting to hang out with us and just let us know more about you.
Well, thank you.
Of course. And if you ever, I've been saying this, but I think I just get way too excited. But I'm like, if you ever, wanted to come back on at a later point, kind of, if you ever had update or anything, I know we kind of talked a bit about something before that I didn't want to mention because I wasn't sure if that was um something
Yeah.
that you've shared, but definitely would love to kind of come back on later on and kind of discuss that maybe.
Yeah. No, I would absolutely love that. So, nope,
Perfect.
there's so much more to life than just one conversation. So, spark it up again.
Yes, I agree. So for anyone who may want to reach out to you, if you could just let us know where they could find you.
Let's just start with my main website, todayforwardconsulting.com. And then my phone number, email, all the socials are out there.
Perfect. And I don't know if you guys saw it earlier, but she did mention you said it was 5 free journaling prompts.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So, I'll send you a message after this and we'll kind of work out what we are going to do for that for you guys so that way you guys can get access to that and make that a little bit easier for you guys. So, definitely
Sounds good.
yes. So, we thank you guys for coming on tonight and we appreciate you hanging out with us and letting us get to know more about Kathy tonight. And I will see you guys on Friday. I believe that's our next episode. Some weeks I have 3, so I'm trying to keep up with it, but yeah, we appreciate you guys and we hope that you have a wonderful Monday night and happy Thanksgiving beforehand because I won't see you on Thursday. So awesome. Well, good night.
Good night.
Bye.